When the people at 60 Minutes wanted to do the story of Barry Minkow, the 15-year-old boy wonder whiz kid carpet cleaner, they came to me for help. I had done this story for KCBS television. It won me the Press Club Award for Best News Writing, probably because it was such a complicated story to tell.
Channel 2 News has learned that a federal grand jury is expected to deliver indictments in the ZBest carpet cleaning scandal, perhaps within the next couple of weeks. The charges could include bank fraud, embezzlement, and securities fraud. The company's 21-year-old founder, Barry Minkow, says he expects to be indicted. The Channel 2 investigations unit, headed up by Ross Becker, has an exclusive report tonight, an interview with Barry Minkow and the inside look at a fraud scheme. Ross.
Tricia, a former associate of Barry Minkow admitted to us he broke the law and he showed us how he did it. Now, Barry Minkow, well, he told me he is ready for a fight, and now he has the Lord in his corner.
Jab.
When he was 15, Barry Minkow started a carpet cleaning company that would one day be worth millions. He worked out of his parents' garage.
Come on.
Today, he's working out in the garage of his $500,000 home, a home he'll soon be turning over to creditors. This comes more than 6 months after allegations of fraud and drug money laundering yanked the carpet out from under Barry Minkow and his seemingly thriving ZBest company. Remember this commercial?
And it's time you called us. I'm Barry Minkow, president of ZBest Carpet Cleaning.
The pace has slowed for Barry Minkow. He spends much of his time preparing his defense in the numerous lawsuits filed against him. And he says he's developing a spiritual life he hopes will come in handy if he's indicted.
People ask me, they say, gosh, aren't you worried about going to jail? And I said, well, the Lord is my defense and my deliverance, and I'll take it as it goes, and one day at a time.
But even Minkow admits that he will need more than a prayer if he ends up here at U.S. District Court, especially since some of his former associates say that he masterminded an unbelievable scheme to trick banks into giving him loans for insurance restoration jobs. Jobs that just didn't exist.
Everybody points a finger at me, and everybody is willing to believe that I did it, without a question of a doubt.
Two men pointing fingers are Mark Morse, who once headed the entire restoration division of ZBest, and Tom Paget, owner of an insurance appraisal firm he claims Minkow employed and financed to make fake restoration jobs appear legitimate. Both men have described to authorities and to us what they call an astonishing sting they say they executed under orders from Barry Minkow. Tom Paget went with us to San Diego to show the trickery needed to convince ZBest's own accounting firm that ZBest actually had a big contract to restore a fire-damaged building in San Diego. In reality, there was no restoration job because there was no burned building to restore. Again, it was all a hoax to make ZBest look more profitable on paper. Why did this have to be San Diego? I mean, tell me that story.
Well, nothing could be L.A. because then people could check it a lot easier. Do you see what I'm saying? In fact, Barry took this to the extreme by picking out sites on the map like Arroyo Grande, Fremont, National City, places that could not substantiate this kind of this size of a building. But it was Barry's attitude that if we would get something out of town and make sure these big jobs are out of town, no one can check on them.
But late in 1986, ZBest's accounting firm, Ernst & Winnie, wanted to actually see job sites before they would certify the company's audits. Paget says the accountants wouldn't take no for an answer.
By January, they said, well, before we certify your next audit, we want to see one of his jobs in progress.
Now, Paget and his associates had to somehow find a structure that could pass for the building he says Minkow dreamed up on paper. Paget eventually found this one in downtown San Diego. He says it matched the paperwork perfectly. 6 unfinished floors and 2 that were occupied. And then for added measure, Paget and an associate rented this nearby warehouse and office. They furnished the office and filled the warehouse with inexpensive carpet. But it was just a facade. I mean, this really was not a warehouse in terms of any job.
No,
right?
no.
This was all theater, right?
Right.
The main stage, though, was the office building. Paget says he convinced a real estate agent he was interested in leasing an office. He was convincing enough that he was given a key to the building's main door, no strings attached. So in February, Mark Moore says he came down and he drove the accountant first to the warehouse and then to the building, which was temporarily adorned with ZBest signs. He did it on a weekend when no one would be around to ruin the illusion that ZBest was actually restoring the building.
Everything was great. The accounting firm put their stamp of approval on what they had seen. They had seen what they were told they would see, a building in the process of construction. And in the back, we were hoping that we would never have to see this building again.
But Paget says the real nightmare came 3 months later when the accountants decided they wanted to inspect the building that by now should have been restored. In fact, 6 floors of the building were still empty shells like this. Now, Paget says they were in so deep there was no turning back. They had to come up with another scheme. To create the illusion, Paget says they had to actually lease most of the building and then make it look like it had been restored, all in only 11 days.
Now, wait a minute, You're going to spend money. You're going to buy or lease a building for a year?
Right. Well, hopefully for a year. We wound up doing it for 7 years at the cost of over $2 million, but we were hoping to do it within a year.
But Paget says $2 million was nothing compared to what was at stake. If the accountants discovered that it was a fake job, they could pull the plug on a pending $80 million deal. In fact, the whole Z-Best operation.
Now, the scenario for here was, hey, the walls were damaged so bad, we just decided we'd put in an entire new interior. So you can see we've got it cleaned up, we've got it dried out, and here's the stage where we're at. And so now with most of the building looking like this, on May 1st, and with the inspection on May 11th, you can appreciate the magnitude of the problem that we had facing us to have this whole building looking not like this by May 11th. And so
Paget says Minkow paid another $2 million to have legitimate contractors complete the job just in time for the accountant to walk through.
It was one of the biggest miracles, I think, and one of the biggest construction miracles in the history of this country.
In less than 2 weeks, though, a newspaper story about earlier, less significant problems with Z-Best would catch the eyes of accountants, investors, and police investigators and hasten the fall of Barry Minkow's empire.
When you have something built up on the house of sand that Z-Best was built on, if there's one tiny chink in the armor, the whole thing can come apart.
Did you know about that restoration contract? Did you know it was phony?
No, clearly no, not that one or others.
He says he didn't know anything about these phony contracts.
Well, that's what he says, but I mean, I'm past the point. To me, that's just humorous now, because once this gets into court, the federal investigators know the paper trail. There are just too many little things that Barry can't possibly cover.
Arthur Behrens is Barry Minkow's attorney.
And the obvious thing to do is point the finger at Barry Minkow and say, well, I may have broken a lot of laws, but I only did so because he told me to.
If the argument gets to federal court, Minkow admits the odds are against him. But he says he beat the odds once before and went on to become known as the whiz kid of carpet cleaning.
I have heard other people from CBS mention Barry Minkow as a whiz kid, boy genius, boy wonder. I think all of those statements are greatly over-exaggerating who Barry Minkow was and is.
I don't ever want to hurt anybody again, ever, unintentionally. And I'm not ready for that right now. I'm not mature enough to handle a company with 1,400 people. And I wasn't then, and at least I have the ability, without the ego and the pride, to admit it now.
Our sources tell us the anticipated federal indictments will not include charges of drug money laundering. For now, the grand jury seems to be focusing on the issue of fraud. And a congressional subcommittee is meeting this month in Washington, D.C., a direct result of the Z-Best case. The question to be answered is how so many bankers and lawyers and accountants could have been tricked, and could it happen again?